In Chapter 4, entitled Bloody Footprints, Dunbar-Ortiz shares the historic beginnings of colonial settler militias exterminating Native Americans in the British colonies that eventually becomes the United States. She begins this chapter by poignantly pointing out how contemporary military utilizes terminology and war practices as an ongoing tradition beginning in colonial times. The killing of Osama bin Laden used the code term Geronimo. Military has long entitled massacre and operations with indigenous names like Apache, Blackhawk, Cayuse, Kiowa, and others. As a matter of fact, the term Indian country has always been a military term for enemy territory. Dunbar-Ortiz rightly points out the term Indian country is a legal name for Indian reservations, as established in early 1800 Supreme Court cases. Following up with the preceding chapter, the author cites documentation of early colonial settlers establishing civil militias to practice irregular warfare in spite of the British governance and the emerging 13 colonies of U.S. Both these governments tacitly and sometimes overtly supported genocidal actions of non-sanctioned colonial settler militias. This American way of war grew to race hatred as especially manifested in Andrew Jackson's killing and removal of Native Americans from the Southeast. The development of the Virginia colony is an example of the twisted rationale of colonists. Although the Powhatans had provided food in early settlement times, the colonists turned on them because they wanted the lands to become farmers themselves. The British governor joined with the colonists to kill Powhatans and starve them out by burning farmlands and food storage areas. Since the colonists were destroying Powhatans as their food source provider, they began bringing in slaves and indentured servants to work the land. The colonial landholders once again used the poor settler farmers to eliminate the natives and push them further west. As indicated earlier, the colonists, like the Puritans, believed Pequots dying from smallpox due to prior contact was divine intervention so they could settle the land. After revitalization, the population increase of the Pequots, the Puritans began a war of annihilation, including killing women, children, and pushing survivors out. The scorched earth way of war was foreign to the indigenous peoples who practiced a guerrilla form of ritualized conflict, resulting in minimal death of other culture groups. The Puritan leader, William Bradford, wrote about thanking God for giving them victory after burning alive indigenous people and their children in their habitats. As with most of the colonies, former mercenaries from warfare in English and European wars were used in the American way of war. With the advent of ranger settler militia groups and increasing colonist populations, they began scalp hunting and took up the guerrilla tactics against indigenous people. The annihilation continued. We'll do the rest of this in part 2.